think you know the people around you. You believe you can identify when someone is toxic, when an energy is heavy, when a behavior crosses the line of what is acceptable. But what if I told you that the real dangers are not obvious? That the most destructive people are often charming, kind, even family members, and that while you try to protect yourself from the obvious villains, you are opening the doors of your mind to something infinitely more dangerous, the unconscious of others invading your own. Carl Gustav Jung dedicated his life to studying these hidden dynamics. In his work, The Ego and the Unconscious, he reveals that most of what truly governs us is not under our conscious control. This applies not just to you, it applies to everyone. And that is precisely where the danger lies. Because when someone is blind to their own darkness, that shadow seeks a host. And often that host is you. Perhaps you have never stopped to think about this, but think now. How many times have you felt emotionally drained after talking to someone? How many times have you been blamed for something you didn't do, or treated as the savior of a tragedy that wasn't even yours? Jung called this projection. An unconscious mechanism where the other projects onto you what they refuse to see in themselves. From that moment on, you cease to be a person and become a symbol, a mirror, an imaginary enemy, an idealized hero. And all these images have something in common. None of them is truly you. But the most frightening part is that often you don't even realize you are in this game. You think you are helping, that you are being empathetic, that you are being mature. Meanwhile, you are sinking into a psychological field that is not yours, trying to resolve conflicts that are not yours, being manipulated by dynamics that were not created by you, but now control you. And it's not just about ill-intentioned people. Jung made it clear. The greatest dangers do not come from conscious perverts, but from unintegrated, unconscious ones. They are those who live alienated from their own psyche, dominated by masks, traumas, complexes, and repressed desires. They are not evil. They are dangerous. And this danger is silent. It doesn't come in through the front door. It infiltrates, slowly, daily. Through small comments, veiled accusations, loaded silences. Until you start to doubt yourself, and when you lose contact with your own psychic reality, you become part of their shadow. Perhaps you are going through exactly this right now. In a relationship, in a friendship, in a work environment, even within your own family. And perhaps you are blaming yourself, trying to understand what is wrong with you. The answer is nothing. But there is something deeply wrong with the way you are being used as a vessel for someone else's unconscious. In this video, we will expose one by one the 6 types of people that Jung would identify as emotionally dangerous. Types that act not with deliberate malice, but with internal forces they themselves do not understand, and that is why they are so destructive. We will use Jung's words, his concepts and warnings, directly from his works such as Aion, The Ego and the Unconscious, and Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, to show you how to recognize these profiles. But more than that, we will open your eyes to the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, one or more of these profiles is within you as well. Are you ready? Then take a deep breath and move forward. But be warned, after hearing this, you will no longer be able to look at people, or even at yourself, the same way. Imagine living with someone who blames you for everything they feel, who turns your presence into a trigger, who makes you feel responsible for emotions you never caused. At first, they seem fragile, sensitive, deep. But over time, you realize you are being dragged into a battlefield that isn't yours, and where you are already at a disadvantage. This is the unconscious manipulator, someone who is unaware of their own wounds, but projects them onto others as a form of psychic survival. Jung said, What we do not confront in ourselves, we will encounter as fate. And often, this fate has a name, a face, and shares the table with you. The unconscious manipulator is someone dominated by repressed content, unintegrated traumas, unprocessed emotional fragments. Instead of looking inward, they aim at you and turn you into a canvas for their internal conflicts. This type of person lives in a state of chronic projection. According to Jung, projecting is an inevitable function of the psyche, but if unrecognized, it becomes destructive. In the book, The Ego and the Unconscious, he states that projection causes a kind of psychic blindness, a prison where the other ceases to be seen as they are and becomes used as a symbol of what is hidden in us. This is exactly what the unconscious manipulator does. They do not see you. They see a lost part of themselves and react to it as if it were real. These people often position themselves as victims. Everything that happens is someone else's fault, never theirs. When they feel anger, it's because you provoked it. When they are sad, it's because you disappointed them. When they feel inferior, it's because you think you are superior. This distortion is so subtle that you start to question yourself. Was I really insensitive? Did I say something wrong? Am I toxic? And thus, manipulation occurs without a shout being heard, without a direct request being made. It's all emotional, unconscious, and absolutely effective. Worse still, often these people are charming. They have charisma, sensitivity, an aura of emotional intensity. This creates a trap, because you think you can help them, heal them, understand them better than others. But what you are doing, in practice, is sacrificing your psychic health, trying to rescue someone who refuses to dive into themselves. And the more you try, the more you sink. Jung warns us that these patterns of projection are especially dangerous because they place us in a symbolic role. Savior, enemy, traitor, father, mother, anything but who we really are. And living in a symbolic bond is living in an illusion. You cease to be seen as a subject and are treated as a distorted reflection of the other's unconscious. The only way to protect yourself from an unconscious manipulator is to develop awareness, recognize the patterns, cut the invisible threads that connect you to this person's emotional narrative. And most importantly, constantly ask yourself if what you are feeling is yours or has been induced. Because the unconscious manipulator does not invade your life violently. They enter through the gap of your empathy. And once you recognize this pattern, the next step is to understand how it disguises itself even more deeply with the mask of the persona, the one who not only projects, but acts, lives in order to appear as something they are not. In the next section, we will explore the bearer of the persona and how it represents one of the greatest psychological risks pointed out by Jung. Because while the unconscious manipulator throws their conflicts onto you, the bearer of the persona can drag you into a world where even you forget who you really are. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Not all psychological danger comes from extreme behaviors. Sometimes, it comes from what seems too perfect, from the ever-ready smile, from the impeccable posture, from the flawless image. We live in an era of appearances where being is less important than seeming. And this, for Jung, was a serious problem, because when someone identifies too much with their own persona, the social mask we use to adapt to the world, they risk completely disconnecting from their essence. And those who live for the mask not only lose themselves, but also begin to distort everyone around them. In the book The Ego and the Unconscious, Jung states that the persona is what someone is not, but what he and others think he is. In other words, an artificial construction, shaped by social, familial, and professional expectations. In itself, the persona is not a mistake. We all use it. It allows us to fulfill social roles, to be a doctor, teacher, brother, friend. The problem begins when someone believes they are only that, when the mask sticks to the face, and everything that is spontaneous, vulnerable, and authentic is locked in the basement of the psyche. The bearer of the persona is the master of functional superficiality. They say what others want to hear. They behave in the right way. They avoid conflicts at all costs. But behind the curtain of control, there is a soul in ruins. Because the more they sustain the image, the more they suffocate the self. And this repression, sooner or later, exacts its price. For those who live with this type of person, the impact is profound. You feel that something is wrong, but you can't say what. There is a lack of spontaneity, of truth, of depth in the interactions. Everything seems rehearsed, and worse, the bearer of the persona projects this demand for perfection onto you as well. They expect you to perform, to fit in, to collaborate with the theater. If you express something outside the script, an intense emotion, a doubt, a pain, they retreat, become uncomfortable, shut down. Because everything that reminds them of what is repressed within becomes unbearable. Jung warned that this type of identification with the persona is one of the greatest threats to the process of individuation, the path of self-knowledge and integration of the unconscious. For him, the real danger begins when the individual is hypnotized by the role they play, believing they are what others see. And that is exactly where the risk lies. When someone lives only to be accepted, recognized, praised, they become a hostage to their own facade. And everything that is genuine dies suffocated behind the veneer. Living with someone like this can lead you to doubt your own spontaneity. You start to police yourself, to measure your words, to hide parts of yourself that don't fit the ideal narrative. Gradually, you also begin to wear a mask and don't even notice. Coexisting with a bearer of the persona is not just artificial, it is contagious. But there is something even darker than that, because when someone represses what they feel, think, and desire for too long, it doesn't disappear. It accumulates. It ferments in the unconscious until it transforms into shadow. And then we enter an even more dangerous territory, that of denied emotions that return with explosive force. In the next section, we will dive into the figure of the owner of the repressed shadow, the one who refuses to see their own dark side until it explodes.